The enemy in Drums Along the Mohawk did not always come from somewhere else. Sometimes he lived down the road. Sometimes he worked beside you. Sometimes he was family. John Ford made a stirring frontier adventure, but the real Mohawk Valley was a civil war, one that divided neighbors, families, and native nations, and gave the film's final victory a meaning Ford never showed you. John Ford planned one of the film's biggest battle scenes. It was supposed to take roughly 3 weeks to shoot. Then Ford threw out the spectacle. No charging lines, no sweeping battlefield, no glorious victory. Instead, he placed Henry Fonda in front of the camera and questioned him from behind it. Fonda answered as Gilbert Martin, a wounded farmer trying to make sense of a battle he had barely survived. Ford later removed his own questions. All that remained was Gil, exhausted, confused, trying to explain what he had seen. At first, the words come slowly. Then memory takes over. Men fall, friends disappear into smoke. Gil returned home, but Fonda plays the scene as though part of him never left the battlefield. Sometimes the strongest way to show a battle is to not show it at all. We do not see the fighting. We see what it did to a man. Gil's battle is the film's version of the 1777 Battle of Oriskany, where General Nicholas Herkimer led a local militia force towards the besieged Fort Stanwix, only to be ambushed in one of the bloodiest and most divided engagements of the American Revolution. The militia marches into disaster, and Gil returns carrying the shock of a valley at war with itself. Gil is not a professional soldier. He is a farmer who wants a roof, a field, and a family. Lana is a sheltered young woman from Albany who has no idea how hard the home will be to keep. They enter the Mohawk Valley believing they are beginning a life. Then history reaches through their front door. Their cabin burns. Their crops are destroyed. Lana loses their first child while fleeing the attack. Gil is called away to fight. Even when another child is born, safety never lasts. Build, lose, survive, begin again. That is the rhythm of Drums Along the Mohawk. Ford gives the conflict a clear shape. The settlers are trying to survive. Caldwell, the sinister Tory agent, directs the violence. Native warriors appear from the woods as an approaching threat. But the real valley was far more tangled. Patriots and loyalists had lived, traded, and worshipped beside one another. Sometimes they belonged to the same families. Then the revolution forced them to choose. The man across the road might no longer be a neighbor. He might be the enemy. The war in the Mohawk Valley was not only a frontier struggle, it was a civil war. Europe had already begun to fracture along similar lines. As the new war spread, politics, occupation, and fear would turn neighbors against one another. Civil conflict does not stay on the battlefield. It enters homes and families. When audiences saw Drums Along the Mohawk in 1939, that idea carried frightening new weight. The film entered general release on November 10th, only 2 months after Germany invaded Poland. Distant wars do not always remain distant. The film offered reassurance, but Ford never pretended survival came without a price. The dead do not return, and a flag cannot rebuild a burned home. But the division between neighbors was only the beginning. The war also split the native nations whose alliances would help decide who survived the valley. At the center was an actor still becoming the man America would trust more than anyone else on screen. By 1939, Henry Fonda was respected. But he was not yet the American conscience audiences would later see in The Grapes of Wrath, the Oxbow Incident, and 12 Angry Men. John Ford was helping build that image. Ford was in the middle of an extraordinary year. Stagecoach had already redefined the Western, and he had just finished Young Mr. Lincoln with Fonda. Now he gave him a farmer. Fonda's Gil Martin fits perfectly inside that vision. He is not powerful because he dominates a room, he is powerful because he does not need to. Gil speaks quietly, he works, he listens. When danger comes, people look to him because he seems steady. But Fonda shows what that steadiness costs. Gil is afraid, he is wounded, he carries memories he cannot control. He simply refuses to let fear make the final decision. A more aggressive actor might have made Gil look born for battle. Fonda makes war look like an interruption of the man Gil wants to be. His deepest purpose is not victory, it is return. Ford and Fonda made something quieter. They made Gil strong by allowing him to remain gentle in a world determined to harden him. Then there was Claudette Colbert. In 1939, she represented polish, sophistication, and control. Lana Martin forces her to surrender that control. She arrives in the valley completely unprepared. She recoils from the cabin. She misses Albany. She fears the isolation and labor. Ford does not pretend bravery comes naturally to her. That is why her transformation matters. Lana works, she waits, she tends Gil's wounds, she loses her first pregnancy while escaping the destruction of their home. Later, she gives birth again while the valley is still at war. Before the war is over, the woman frightened by a crude cabin will be asked to defend far more than one. And then Edna May Oliver arrives as Mrs. McKlennar. She is sharp, funny, practical, completely unimpressed by self-pity. When the Martins lose their home, she gives them shelter, work, and a place to recover. She does not make kindness look noble. She makes it look necessary. Official Academy records list Oliver as the film's only Oscar nominee for Best Supporting Actress. She lost to Hattie McDaniel for Gone with the Wind, but Mrs. McKlennar gives the film its stubborn heartbeat. Gil runs for help, Lana changes the most. Mrs. McKlennar already understands what both are still learning. No one survives alone. The real hero of Drums Along the Mohawk is a community that refuses to break apart. But that community was only one part of the struggle. Beyond Ford's family story, other people were also fighting for homes, survival, and a future in the valley. The title promises drums, attack, and heroism, but courage in the real Mohawk Valley belonged to more than one people. The revolution divided the Hadenosaunee Confederacy. Most nations continued their alliance with Britain, while most Oneida and some Tuscarora supported the American cause. Families split, individuals chose differently, and some communities tried to remain neutral. The Oneida were not minor observers. Fort Stanwix stood within their traditional homeland, and they served as warriors, scouts, guides, messengers, and couriers. They fought beside Patriot forces at Oriskany and helped resist the British campaign through the valley. The film gives Gil a native friend in Blueback. That friendship hints at a larger world. But Ford keeps the camera close to one community, while history reveals a wider resistance. Native allies also fought, suffered, and lost homes. Oneida communities endured severe wartime destruction. After independence, the United States did not consistently protect the land or sovereignty of its native allies. That gives the final flag a second meaning beyond the settlers' immediate relief. The fuller story does not lessen Gil and Lana's suffering. Their home burns, their child is lost, and their neighbors die. It does not cancel their story, it widens it. We want the people inside the fort to survive. But beyond those walls, other families were losing homes too. Both truths can exist at once. The settlers' fear is real. So is the suffering outside the frame. The people inside the fort are not wrong to defend their homes. They are simply not the only people fighting to save one. Then Ford places everyone we care about behind the same walls. And those walls were not built in New York. They were built in Utah. Drums Along the Mohawk was John Ford's first Technicolor feature. Much of it was filmed near Cedar City, Utah, where difficult weather and remote terrain complicated production. Ford turned those difficulties into something magnificent. A landscape beautiful enough to lose. The fields glow, the leaves burn red and gold, and Gil and Lana's new life looks worth every sacrifice. Then Ford turns the beauty against them. The warm light becomes fire, and the open countryside becomes a place where danger can appear from any tree line. The valley matters because they love it, and that love gives the war something to destroy. Ford's greatest technical triumph is not simply the color, it is the scale. He turns one battle into Henry Fonda's face. Then he opens the film outward for the final siege. Families crowd into the fort as smoke fills the air and ammunition runs low. And now, Lana's transformation is complete. The woman who once recoiled from a frontier cabin is standing inside a besieged fort, protecting her child in the community that gave her a home. Fear is still there, but it no longer controls her. Joe Boleo tries to escape for help. He's killed. Mrs. McKlennar, the woman who opened her home to the Martins, is mortally wounded defending the people inside the fort. The door she opens for others has become a wall she is willing to die protecting. Then Gil runs. No plan, no guarantee. He must break through the attackers and reach the nearest fort before everyone behind him is overwhelmed. Lana, their child, and the entire community are behind him. He cannot know whether the fort will still be standing when he returns. He runs anyway. That is leadership in Drums Along the Mohawk. Not command, not glory, responsibility. The willingness to carry hope when hope has become almost unreasonable. Gil reaches the nearest fort and returns with troops. The attackers are driven off. The new American flag is raised. Ford allows the ending to be stirring, and it should feel stirring. That is the tension. The flag means rescue for Gil and Lana, but for some people who helped make that victory possible, it did not mean safety at all. Victory cannot restore the cabin, the child, or the people they buried. What it offers is permission to imagine tomorrow. Gil and Lana celebrate because destruction failed to take everything. They are still together and still capable of beginning again. John Ford made a magnificent film about a family trying to survive a valley at war. And the history beyond the frame makes that survival even more powerful. The enemy did not always come from somewhere else. Sometimes he lived down the road, sometimes he had work beside you, sometimes he was family. Patriots fought loyalists, the Hadenosaunee Confederacy divided, and Oneida allies helped support the American cause. That is what Ford's story never showed. The victory that gave Gil and Lana a chance to rebuild did not offer the same security to the Oneida people who helped make that victory possible. That does not make the family's victory false. It makes the history larger. Gil and Lana lose their cabin. They lose their crops. They lose a child. and still, they begin again. That is the film's deepest image of heroism. Not the musket, not the fort, not even the flag. The hands returning to the soil after the smoke clears. So tell me, does knowing what Ford's story never showed change the way you see the final victory? Or does it make the family's survival feel even more powerful? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy discovering the real history and old Hollywood stories behind classic adventure films, subscribe to Flashback Rewind.